Hey everyone, this is Zach. I just want to put a quick little apology / note on this upcoming episode. For some reason, there were some audio issues on my end. I tried my best to scavenge or try to make the audio sound pretty decent, but it ended up working out. So I just try to make do of what I have now. But besides that, though, hope you enjoy this episode I did with Ian Aisling. Hey everyone, I'm Zaki Binado. Welcome to another new episode of Hangin With Hibbi. Today we got Ian Aisling. He's a local musician. He does a bunch of different music from chiptune, piano, lo-fi, anything is personally for me. We'll probably go into this more later, but you intrigue me. I think out of like a lot of musicians I know personally, I think you intrigue me the most. Just like with like music process, everything in general. I just every time I see you release something, or well, again, we'll touch on this later. But a couple times, I got to sit in with you in your studio, just watching you work. It's hard to explain. It's just really interesting to me. It's just the best way I could say it. It's really intriguing. Hey, how you doing,
Lovely.
Ian?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me on. This is pretty rad. You're
Yeah,
pretty rad. This whole vibe is rad.
everything is rad,
I love rad.
radical. All right, so like I mentioned earlier, you're a musician. I would just first off start off like I do with most of my guests is just what is the your origin story with starting music in general and just writing your own and all that.
It was a dark and stormy night,
Thunderous crash.
and there was a bridge. No, I honestly, it's pretty. I guess standard. I didn't find a guitar in an alleyway or anything, or
Mhm.
like a piano hanging from a ceiling, like in a
Or a guitar wizard that was just saying
house.
like, "Hey, for $5 you could have this guitar."
Yeah, my parents were both very musical. Like they just musicians and music lovers.
Hmm.
And so they put my two sisters and I through piano lessons from a young age because it was like this is what you got to do, music and kids and growing in that. And it was kind of cool because when I first started piano lessons, we were doing this program where it was actually like a class setting. This wonderful lady named Catherine Klein.
Oh, yeah.
She
Shout
was
out.
running music for young children programs outside of her home. She had her basement set up. It's like a classroom. There's like a bunch of pianos, and then
Hmm.
it was like it made piano lessons really interesting for like really young kids because
Yeah.
there's like I was also being homeschooled at the time, so it
Hmm.
was like this kind of my only experience of school or going to see other kids and then learning about something was like correlated with piano. So that was kind of cool. And then, time went on. I wasn't a kid anymore, so I couldn't do it through
Don't you
them.
hate when that happens?
Yeah. Oh, at least on the outside, I wasn't a kid anymore. Just this like 6'3", like
It's like a Benjamin Button situation. Just-
I'm like sitting on the carpet like this, and there's the kids are just like I want to play piano.
Okay, you know.
Yeah, so from what I remember, we went through a couple of other teachers. My sisters and I were all taking lessons at the same time. My older sister, Olivia, she was a couple years ahead, so she was working on the like more classical stuff. And my younger sister was a couple years below, and she was doing her own thing. I don't really remember the journey exactly, but I know that there came quite a few times where I was sick of piano lessons, and I
Mhm.
just like I remember quitting probably 2 or 3 times and then taking like a 2 year break from it. Didn't like the whole officiality of it because I didn't really like the songs.
Oh yeah.
But when you're a kid and you have an adult explaining something to you, like saying like you need to learn this because it's good for you and you'll be a great piano player, it's like, well, okay, I guess this is the only way that you can learn piano. And
Hmm.
if you start to make that correlation early and you don't like the music, then it can sort of push you away from it. So, but what was interesting is that as soon as I stopped taking the lessons, I was playing piano like 5 times as much because
Hmm.
I didn't feel like anyone was telling me what to do. So I would just try to make up my own songs, and I would also try to lift songs from video games
Yeah.
just by ear. And that was like, I think that's where the core of the training came from, was just that like total independent exploration throughout teenage years at the piano. And
Yeah.
I specifically remember I ended up doing lessons again in I think it was intermediate, like grade 8 and 9 kind of thing.
Hmm.
And we did a piano recital, and then I played the song that I learned from my book. And then after, you know, everyone was talking in the auditorium or wherever, and people were just like sitting down and jamming on the piano, like after the show.
Yeah.
And I sat down and I just started playing some stuff that I made up, and like some Final Fantasy music that I
Yeah.
like
Awesome.
was working on. And I remember my teacher just being like, "What the heck? Like, when did you learn all that?"
What happened?
Yeah, I think she seemed shocked, and because
Hmm.
it was like it was a higher difficulty than the stuff that I was learning in the book.
Hmm.
But because I loved the music so much, that was enough determination to just figure it out anyways. Like,
Yeah.
sure, there might have been some weird like finger things that I was doing that weren't the greatest, but
Yeah.
that's kind of besides the point, right? Anyways, trying to keep it short because I could talk for 38 years about this stuff, even though I'm only
We have
20.
all the time in the world. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, anyways, I by the end of high school, I knew that I loved playing piano, and I'll talk about this later when we get into like musical paths and
Mhm.
preferences and that.
Yeah.
But I also really loved writing music, and
Yeah.
I was super inspired by that. But I was too freaked out by the idea of doing music school because I thought that it would just be like this extension of piano lessons where it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, they're going to force me to do stuff that I don't want to do. And blah, 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 blah. But then, so what I did was I went to Sheridan College for art.
Mhm.
It was like a general arts program where they show you kind of like the basics of different things. Um, that went on for a year, and that was basically just my compromise. It's like, well, I'm good at drawing, so I'll draw instead, and then I'll just keep playing piano. But what ended up happening is by halfway through that program, I was making music more than ever and
Yeah.
practicing piano more than ever. So much so that I was just not doing assignments for that program because I would rather do music. And I even ended up finding this thing that I wrote to myself. It's like a self-written letter.
Oh, I've done this before.
Yeah, it's really fascinating
It's
when you open
interesting.
it up.
Yeah.
It's cool to learn about your past self being narrated by your past self.
Yeah.
But it was just this message that was like, you know what, Ian? Yeah, you can draw, but you really have to just suck it up and study music seriously and just make that the path. And art will come in handy in other ways, but it's not the path.
Yeah.
And then I just like went home, looked up the Mohawk music program because my sister Olivia was going there as well. So I was kind of like, well, I would already know some people because she's there. And it's I also just thought that the college environment for music would be a little more chill. Like it
Mhm.
wouldn't be as elitist, which actually kind of proved to be true in some regard.
Yeah.
But it also depends on, who is actually in the program, and that the people are what really make the difference. Yeah, and then did that, graduated like 3 years ago, and now I'm just like making music every day, teaching
Yeah.
piano, and just loving life, and always being surprised by sound.
As like going along that day, you mentioned that you're teaching. How is it? How's it like teaching versus like actually like learning yourself? Is there like a? Do you feel that it's like does it feel weird? Is there a huge difference to you?
You know, that's a great question. Um, at first, I didn't want to teach at all
Mhm.
because I was scared that I would potentially push someone away from music
Yeah.
by, introducing something in a way that made it overwhelming or, like too complicated, right? And I had a pretty substantial fear of that going for at least a couple of years after graduating, where I wasn't applying even though I was totally capable of. And then I just started to realize it's like, you know what? I think we have to come at this from the total opposite angle and think like, how about we be somebody who can make music a wonderful thing for somebody? And like, if
Yeah.
that's the goal, then we can't go wrong, right? And if anyone doesn't like it, then it's totally their decision if they're not interested. It's like, I can't put the blame of that on myself.
I could, I guess I could say the same thing about taking piano lessons as a kid and not really like going back to it. At least for me personally, I didn't really go back to it. But now I find, well, I recently I bought this cheapo Casio keyboard because I suddenly felt this. I guess what would be the proper word for this? I just felt inspired to or motivated, I guess, to learn piano again. So yeah, I got this Casio keyboard. So every now and then I go for like an hour or two and just like try to like I still just to get some refreshers. I just found all the books that I used during piano lessons and just see like how much I remember and try to refresh myself, like doing like simple scales, doing some songs maybe that I did for exams, like all that. So and then I picked up
Yeah.
after I'm all over the place right now, but after I
No,
did the
it's good.
piano, yeah, after I did the piano, I still do. I picked up the drums. Like one of the reasons because my brother started playing it, and I'm like, hey, drums are cool. I want to learn how to play. So I just honestly like shout out to Rock Band for teaching me how to play drums
Oh
in
yeah.
general. And it's crazy how similar it is, at least for the drums, like with everything
Yeah, the
along with it.
coordination you need, like, it's working the same parts of your,
Yeah,
like, your limbs and that, right?
it's like it's funny that some people are like, oh, did you like take drum lessons or did you do this? Like, no, I just played Rock Band,
Just playing
expert.
Rock Band.
Like I played, I play, I know how to play chop suey on the drums, bro.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and then watching just YouTube drum covers too, I find helps as well because I just kind of watch the whatever drum cover and just kind of mimic what they're doing, and then try to add
Mhm.
my own little flair to it too.
Yeah, I'm it's really fascinating how many, like, other forms of learning there are, like,
Yeah.
because of the internet as well. Like, you can do online lessons with, like, your favorite guitar player, if you like, I mean, if they're teaching them, of course, but like
Hmm.
you can just be in contact with whoever you want. And like, especially for practicing stuff, uh if there's a video of somebody doing a drum cover, then you can just watch them play it, and you can slow the video down and like
Yeah.
see, like, it's endless how many options there are.
Hmm.
I also realized I didn't quite answer your question earlier about the teacher thing, like the difference between being taught and being a teacher.
Oh, hey.
And I think that the the biggest difference is that I when you're a student, you're I think a lot of students don't realize how in charge they are of their own learning, right?
Hmm.
It's like they put all of it on the teacher, which makes sense for getting more information,
Yeah.
but it also, if something's not working or you can't get it, you need to know how to ask the right questions, right?
Hmm.
And I think that the teacher's job shouldn't be to force things upon the student so much as just figuring out how to make the student comfortable enough to ask the questions that they need to ask. So it feels really nice being a teacher because I know that if that's the goal with a student, is to just make them comfortable
Yeah.
to be able to learn how they need to learn, then I can't go wrong.
Hmm.
So it feels really secure
Yeah.
in that sense.
Like I mentioned earlier, I guess like I said like beginning, I'm just really intrigued with your writing process in general. Just how does how does your brain work? I don't know how the best way to like ask this question. Just how is a like for me example, I sat down with you. I sat down. You just started playing something on the piano. They started like, oh, this will sound good. And you just kept adding stuff over and over. An hour later, you just have this really cool sounding song. I'm just sitting there, just amazed with what I just saw. Just do you, is there like somewhere where it comes from, or what is really like the process when it comes to that?
That's a that's a pretty good question. um, I mean, the lazy answer is just kind of like, oh, I don't know. It just kind of all happened.
Is that easy?
I think it's a huge combination of knowing what's possible, but also always being willing to explore new things and like try crazy ideas out.
Yeah.
Um, and trust.
Yes.
Like trust is a huge thing for, I mean, collaborating especially, but you could think of it like every time you make or you create something as an artist, you engage in this big collaboration within your brain. And there's going to be different parts of you that aesthetically like other things or certain things. And if you can cooperate all those parts or aspects of your personality, then it becomes this really sort of like spiritual thing, and the art just creates itself. It's almost like you end up becoming a witness to something unfolding in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also something that can be practiced. So the more that you sit down and the more that you create and the more that you experiment and the more that you trust yourself as an artist or a creator, the easier it is to get into that mode. And it's like anything, right? Like you can become an expert at it and then you start to know what it takes to start and finish a piece. It's a lot of trial and error though, because
Yes.
sometimes there's this really big issue of wanting all your ideas to have a say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and or also starting projects and then getting into this really awesome groove with it, but then not quite finishing it and then leaving it and then never coming back to it. And that can also create this dissonance where you start to think like, oh, but I have all these unfinished songs that I haven't given attention to.
Yeah.
And then you just keep turning around and writing new ones and then not finishing those. And then you end up with this huge stockpile of unfinished stuff. I think that what really helps with that as well is creating uh, well, going back to them, think about the ones that felt really awesome in the moment and then give them a second chance. Like all you're really doing is rather than using your energy to create new stuff, you just redirect it to finishing the old stuff. Basically, to summarize, my brain is really good at redirecting energy. And whether it's towards finishing a song, starting a song, or completing the form of a song, I can always get what I want, especially if I'm alone. It's a little
Awesome.
harder with a collaboration, but
Yeah.
it's also something that just has to be practiced to be easier, right?
Yeah, for sure. I could say the same thing. Where right now I'm in the middle of writing my album,
Mm-hmm.
writing my album right now, and just yeah, the trust thing. Because there's times where I write like a simple beat, I'm like, oh, this sounds great, but there's times where I like kind of like second guess myself, like, ah, it's bad, and I kind of like write it off. But I've been trying now, just be like, no, 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 just sit on it, like, just don't like. Right now, you probably think that it's like, ah, it's not great, but like get away from it for like a night or something and then come back to it and see how you feel. That's the main thing I have to keep reminding myself. It's just it might you might think it sucks now, but maybe like get away from it for a little bit and come back to it and see what you think after. And I find now I come back to like, oh, this actually sounds pretty great to me.
Absolutely, man. That's the you hit the nail on the head with that. Time, such a gift for creative process. Um, you know, the quote from Toy Story. It's like you can't rush art,
Art, exactly. He was
right?
right. He was right.
Yet truer words have never been spoken.
Ever.
There's something really powerful about having the comfort and trust to just sit with something for a little bit.
Mhm.
Like I've usually of all the stuff that I've released, aside from the piano improvisations, the the incubation period is about 2 years for like the chiptune stuff. Like that's about how long it takes from the beginning of it to it being released and totally mastered and done, kind of thing. Um, and that's because there's it's part of that process of like starting a bunch of songs in like one big wave and then redirecting the energy to it to finish them off, and that takes time as well. But
Mhm.
also just sitting with it, listening to it, depending on the time of day, depending on your mood. Sometimes if I'm in a really bad mood or I'm in like a sad mood,
Mhm.
I'll make note of that being the perfect time to go and review some tracks that are in progress, because that emotional state will be really helpful for a reference.
Mhm.
And there's been times where I'll listen to a song while I'm uh, feeling kind of upset about things, like a song that I made,
Mhm.
and if the song helps me get over it, then I know that it's on the right track. But if I hear the song and it makes me cringe, or it's just like stupid, like really lame sounding, then I'll know that it needs more work, or it's time to just shelf it and
Mhm.
never, like, just move on and do something else. That's not the only criteria to decide for tracks, but sometimes it's a good one. Like if your emotional state can be really helpful for that. But you want to get as many different emotional states on it as possible,
Yeah.
so that you have uh, the biggest data collection, the most what's the word, variety, I guess,
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
biggest
yeah.
variety of data. Yeah, more test subjects.
Yeah. Exactly. I guess going along that about writing music, do you feel there's a difference with writing music before quarantine and after, like during quarantine right now? Do you feel this giant difference?
uh well, early quarantine, like in the summer, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
um because but that's, I don't know if it's so much directly related to the vibe of quarantine as it is just having months of free time all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally the way that it works is I'll be working on projects in between teaching and doing other things and gigs and that, right? Hanging out with people, socializing. So you have this constant variety of interaction with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Even just exercise, like getting out of the house and doing things, like actually moving my legs.
Yeah.
um, all of that plays a huge part, kind of going back on the emotional thing, where your
Mm-hmm.
emotions really can affect your opinion on music, and also the way that your body receives the sound and translates it.
Mm-hmm.
um, that's why when we're sad, sometimes listening to sad songs is the best cure, because it just helps get it all out,
Yeah, let it
right?
all
It's
out. Yeah.
Yeah, or others might, if they're feeling down, they might listen to something happy to cheer them up. But
Yep.
it depends on what your needs are, right? Um, but usually it's like you're trying to line up those two things, like your emotions with what you kind of want from the music.
Mm-hmm.
And so with quarantine, it was really, I thought it was awesome because I have all these instruments here that um, I wanted to improve just my skill on, and I got to practice them pretty well every day. And I recorded the process of all of that, and it's actually going to be in my latest release, like the quarantine project, I
Yeah.
suppose. It won't be called that because I feel like everyone's calling their project, it's like, this quarantine song. I mean, quarantine. The word quarantine just
Yeah.
sounds stupid.
Yeah. It sounds silly.
Yeah, this was an album made in isolation.
Shit.
It's like, well, you know what? Like pre-quarantine, it's all being made in isolation. It's not like I'm making it on the front lawn.
Yeah.
But not to like stomp on anyone's vision or anything. I
Mm-hmm.
just like, yeah, the vibe of of the music, I think, is really well reflected in just having more than enough time to make decisions, like creative decisions, as opposed to just them being worked into a normal schedule. That's the most profound thing from quarantine. So it's been quite, it's been cool. It's
Mm-hmm.
been, I will always think about this year as a really powerful learning experience. Just
Mm-hmm.
learning how I think. I mean, I'm sure we've all had our ups and downs of
Yeah.
problem solving and things like that. And but yeah, it's like a year of reflection, and it comes
Yes.
out in the music too.
I was gonna say that at least for me personally, that's a giant year reflection, and it
Mm.
wasn't again. Not everyone, no one was expecting this, and it just like this entire thing happening. So yeah, it's just like a lot of self reflection during this time. It's really interesting. It's the best way I could describe it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
The universe doesn't make any mistakes. So like everything that's happening is supposed to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it's happening, like the way that our conversation's going, the way that, it in many ways it's kind of a blessing. I mean, rest in peace all the souls who have died because
Mm-hmm.
of like the virus, and that side of it is absolutely tragic. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
really sad when you think of that stuff. But at the other end, it's caused a lot of people to wake up about
Yeah.
things,
Oh yeah.
especially their own lives. I think people are becoming more mindful now. It's
Mm-hmm.
also helped clarify a lot of issues with businesses and with equality as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also helped bring to the surface issues in the music industry too. So there's a lot of stuff that's just like rising to the top because we've all been forced to pause everything, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really important. I think that in our lifetimes we're going to witness some pretty extraordinary changes.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
my take on all that.
that's your take. It's good. It's good. So I didn't mention earlier, but you got to do, was it a couple months ago? I would say you got to do music for this documentary, Road to Roxham. I was just wondering, how was it like working on that, uh, working on that project? Because I feel like, at least personally, for me, I feel like it would be like a huge difference from what you're used to.
Yeah, it's like um, it's a form of collaboration, but it's a really interesting one because, well, when you're doing a score for something, especially if it's an indie project, then it's usually
Mm-hmm.
just like one composer, right? And
Yeah.
then I have to coordinate my music to the director.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really it all depends on the director
Yeah.
for those kinds of things. In this case, the director for the Roxham film, he I did a student project for him, Christian Gomez.
Mm-hmm.
He did a student project called The Last Guide, which is a documentary on the last fishing guide in Algonquin Park.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this amazing person who's had this whole lifetime of living and giving people tours of like how to go fishing and all that in that area. But that was like my foot in the door with that project, and that's where we kind of got to know how we both work. And so this project, um, it was really nice because the way that one thing that I really appreciated about the collaboration is that the director was never like, well, I don't want to use a word that's too intense.
Mm-hmm.
He was never overly excited about the music that I gave him.
Mm-hmm.
There was no like constant effusive praise of just like, oh, it's
Yeah.
perfect, oh, it's great, oh, it's nothing,
Yeah.
it's like locked in. I think on one hand, a lot of composers who do freelance work with that kind of stuff, they really wish for that to happen because revisions can be really tiring.
Yeah.
But in this case, it always came from a, yeah, well, this string part is great, but it kind of gets in the way of this scene. And what was really awesome about the collaboration with him is that there's always this vision of how the film should go, and
Hmm.
every conversation we'd have would get closer to that. So even though there is work to do, it ended up being exactly what it needed to be by the end. So it's a cool project, fun stuff.
Yeah, that's I'm happy to hear that he actually gave you like constructive criticism when it comes to
Yeah.
like going back and forth music, because I find that personally for me with whenever, not even just like music, just in general, just like I need your honest opinion. What is it won't hurt me that it says it sucks, blah blah blah. I just want to know like what you genuinely think about
Hmm.
a specific thing I show you.
Yeah, and that's absolutely vital for a serious project to, I mean, not only for it to be completed, but for it to be good. There has to be honesty and there needs to be clear communication. As soon as you get into that realm where it's like, oh, I mean, I don't really like the guitar part that the guitar player played, but I don't know how to tell him. It's like you're already just tanking.
Yeah,
It's like you have to tell them. Do you want it to be what the vision is,
yeah,
or do you want it to just be this like for fun kind of thing that's
yeah.
just, we're jamming? And the guitar player is equally responsible for being cool with trying again.
Hmm.
Of course, there's all things in moderation. You don't want to just like, if you have to sit there and do 1,000 takes, then maybe it's not the right guitar player, right?
Hmm.
But pay people for their time and just keep communication clear.
Like you mentioned earlier, a little bit. You played like a couple local shows around Hamilton. I just want to know like what's your experience with the local music scene here in Hamilton?
Oh, it's well, first of all, I love Hamilton. Like,
Mm.
it's I've lived here all my life,
Yep.
and it's so interesting hearing the opinions from outside of the city of Hamilton. It seems to be generally like, eh,
Oh yeah.
smokestacks and
Yeah.
poison gas in your backyard. It's like, really? There's poison gas?
What?
How am I alive? People here are generally quite friendly, actually.
Hmm.
I mean, you go to any part of any city and it's going to be rough, right? Like,
Yeah.
or the vibes will be a little
Yeah.
questionable. But this city is it's really extraordinary, and
Yes.
the vibe of the venues as well is really cool. Like, as per COVID, I don't really know what the Hamilton music scene is going to look like coming out of that. It's I, most scenes are in complete shambles now, but from when I was playing, um, there are always well, there's a few main bars or venues, right?
Yeah.
And because they have a pretty good reputation, they can always pull people in, and the owners are always fine to
Hmm.
to collaborate with and to work out deals in that. Unfortunately, it can be difficult to make money doing
Oh yeah.
shows because a lot of venues they don't pay a flat rate anymore.
Hmm.
Um, Instead, you kind of split door, right?
Yep.
But I think of one issue that I've found is that I would hope to see changed is just stacking too many bands together for a night.
Yeah.
Like the show starts at 10 and there's four bands,
Yeah.
or I think there was one I played where there was five bands.
Yeah.
Like the show's wrapping up at 3. You're gonna get a couple bands that get all the people, and then the rest of them, everyone's gonna get tired and
Yeah.
leave.
Go home. Yeah.
And then you have to split up the door between
Hmm.
all five bands.
Yes.
So it's not a very practical approach for numbers and for uh, just for I think for the sake of a good show.
Yeah.
People can only take sound for so long. But
Yeah.
other than that, I didn't find the vibe of playing a Hamilton show really that different from playing a Toronto
Toronto
show
show.
or
Yeah.
a London show. Like, so long as you've told people, and people show up, then you're just playing a show, right? In
Hmm.
a city. Parking is also way easier, so
Oh
that's
yeah.
always nice.
I
Yeah.
can say that. I can say that personally for for being in a band for like only for like a couple months, but even in those span of like a couple months, I learned a lot during that time. Just again, like you mentioned, a show starting late and had to split people like taking care of like door duty. I remember when
Yeah.
I uh, my old band we hosted this holiday show. And I just remember like, all right, guys, so during this band, this guy's gonna cover this band. This guy's you're gonna cover, but I'll cover. It's just it took me back while you were mentioning that. Just how much, even though it was like, yeah, it was stressful at first, it was also just fun and interesting to even host your own show. Like that's a huge.
Yeah, and you meet a
That was
lot
one.
of people.
That was a most definitely like in one of my bucket lists. Just being able to quote unquote headline your own show, even though you hosted the show, but still, it's just cool just to be able to do all that plan and everything. At least for me personally, it was interesting and fun to do.
Yeah, and it's I mean, if you do it every once in a while, it's pretty fun. I know that like the first batch of shows, once we can have shows again, like they're gonna be wild.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be so stoked. But it also, when you factor in the money aspect of it, it does start to get exhausting, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're hauling gear all over the city, or you're going to Toronto or other places, and trying to coordinate all that and then put on a good show, and then you have to hang around for all the bands to
Yeah.
play. But it's a journey. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing, I don't think there's anything negative about it. You put yourself in the situations that you want to put yourself in, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's definitely an experience.
yeah. Going along that, where do you see like live music going in the future? I know there's a couple bands, some artists doing like live stream sets and all that, but just at least personally for me, it's cool that they're able to do like still like technically perform live still, but just it feels weird to me because it's just like again just the environment of like all your like people watching, people like singing along, doing all that, like kind of that is just not part of the like show now, which is kind of strange to me. But I'm curious, where do you think it will be going in the next like year or so?
That's a great question. I think that uh, it's obviously opened up a lot of opportunities for people who maybe weren't down to do shows because of all the reasons we were talking about before, but now can, because they're like, oh, well, more people are interested in looking at live stream shows. So
Yeah.
I did a live stream show earlier in quarantine
Mm-hmm.
with my sister, and it was a really cool thing. But it also, it's definitely strange.
Yeah, it's different,
Um,
completely
I
different.
wouldn't say that it's going to be a replacement for in-person concerts really at
Mm-hmm.
all. Um, it's a good substitute, like for people who might not be able to go there. Um, but yeah, it's kind of disconnecting. It's like the difference between watching a sports game on TV and then watching it in
In
person.
person, yeah.
Right? Well, I know that's not a really good example, because I personally enjoy watch like in the 3 times that I watch sports every 19 months.
Yeah.
Um, I
That's good.
prefer it to be on TV because I
Uh,
can see everything happening. I'm not
yeah.
like a yeah.
Like
Anyways,
nosebleeds.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like looking at a picture of a blanket versus feeling the blanket. I feel
Oh
like
yes, that's a good.
that's a
That's good.
much better
Yeah.
example. Yeah. So I don't think it'll replace live shows. It will just kind of be an extension of it. Like
Mhm.
maybe people will start selling live show tickets for in person, and it'll also be streamed online. Like I could see that happening.
Oh, that'd be really cool if they did. Cause
But
I knew some bands did that, but having it more like a thing would be really cool.
yeah, and and then you could have like it could be interesting to have, like Twitch chat where you
Yeah.
what everyone's saying, they have all the emotes and everything.
Mhm.
If they had the live chat, I'm kind of just realizing this now, that would be awesome. I better patent it.
Yeah.
No, they could have a screen behind the band playing live of all the people chatting who are at
Yeah.
home watching it. Like that'd be kind of neat.
There's like some interesting things I saw during some of the live stream sets. I, even like during like an NBA match or any like sports event, they have like the crowd, like I don't know how it works, but they're all in a Zoom call or something, but they have like everyone like watching in the background to see everyone's reaction to that. So that'd be another thing that would be cool. Just like maybe, for example, like, oh, I can't make it, my car broke down. Like, oh, you can watch the live stream and do like this cool Zoom
Yeah.
call and technically be part of the show. It's interesting what they're, not even just musicians, just like YouTubers, streamers, just in general. It's just interesting what they come up with during this time.
Yeah, it's like that all that extra energy that's normally being used hanging out and socializing and doing all that, it's just being channeled right back into more ideas
Mm-hmm.
for creatives. Actually, I think whenever VR starts to become more normalized,
Yeah,
if it does, that's when live shows will start to take on a new
I never thought about it. Yeah, if
vibe.
when virtual reality becomes more like accessible and not like costing an arm and a leg, I feel like it would
Yeah.
be it would be really an interesting experience to see that happen.
Yeah, I wonder how it would be approached. There's so many things you could do. Like
Mm-hmm.
you could have it so you can walk around the band as they're playing,
Yeah.
right? And then because you're also experiencing like a three-dimensional projection of everything, you could
Mm-hmm.
have animations come off the instruments while they're playing. Like it would be an
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Yeah.
The closest thing to feeling the blanket.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe even a little better in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because beer's not $15 for 100
Oh man,
milliliters, a shot of beers.
that's like one of the things I don't miss about live shows. Just like, hey, can I get water or can I get like this Coke? Ah, $5. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
No, you can't.
it's just sitting there. Like, all right, cool.
Get out.
Uh, what I noticed, and also probably the viewer, just like all the instruments in the background, and for me personally, being in your studio, it's really cool that you have this sort of mini studio in your basement. How's it like having that?
You know, it's uh it's convenient, but it's also strange.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you do a lot of work from your living space, you start to get this strange correlation where like breaks and work blend together as the same
Oh,
thing.
mm-hmm.
So that's a bit of an issue. I'm in the process of moving out anyways, which is pretty
Yeah.
rad.
Mm-hmm.
It's rad.
All right.
It's rad.
Word of the day.
Rad, not bad. It's rad. But I'm playing with the idea of leaving the studio here, so it would just at least I would be separate
Oh,
from
that's great. That'd be great.
yeah, because there's still people in the house
Yeah.
and I love the vibe of this room too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really cozy, and yeah, ultimately it's great. Um, Someday I wish to have like an actual building dedicated to a studio
Mm-hmm.
space. But we're not there yet. Just keep adding the collection for now, keeping
Yeah.
everything cozy in that. Um,
I
but
guess
yeah,
I don't know if it's similar, but I find that like yeah, you can't really separate yourself from like quote unquote work and like taking a break because it's just like as soon as you walk out of your room, it's just right there in front of you.
oh hey, yeah,
Yeah. So I like a couple months ago I used to have like my entire like this entire like computer setup in my bedroom. So literally I wake up and turn to the left. Oh, all my stuff is there, which is cool at first, but after a little bit you just feel at least personally for me I don't know if anyone else could like relate to this, but just if you feel for me I
it's
feel
weird.
exhausted. Yeah, weird. I feel exhausted. I don't know how to
It
like
also
explain it.
yeah, it also feels like it's easier to be lazy or you're the what's the word the weight of how long you sit at that computer when it's in your room
Mm-hmm.
feels a lot more intense or it feels way heavier than when it's in a different room. I think there's a psychological relationship between the place of sleep and rest and the place of active brain activity as well.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, I used to have my setup in my room when it was upstairs, and it was the same deal. It's like you just start to feel this like time also just starts to feel weird.
Yes,
Um,
exactly. I feel
I
that.
can't stress enough how wonderful it is to have a bedroom with no screen in it at all.
Hmm.
Like no TV or anything, just a
Yeah,
bed.
yeah.
And
Like, yeah. I remember. What was it? I just remember the day. I think I can't remember what I can pinpoint what the date is, but I remember just one day, just like sitting there in my room with like my computer set. I'm like, this is too much. Like, I don't want to get rid of it, obviously, but like, I'm
yeah,
gonna move it. I want to move it like somewhere else. Like, oh, we, my family just cleaned up the basement. I just bring everything down there. So that's what I just did. And then now I just feel my brain doesn't feel so like scattered. Is the best way I could describe it. Is the
yeah,
best way I could describe it. Yeah.
it's a good decision that you made.
uh, I guess we'll go into some like fun questions. Again, like you mentioned, you always been playing music your entire life. You have a musical family. What are your inspirations when it comes to music?
Oh, that's a lovely question. They're all lovely questions. I feel lovely
Yeah,
being asked them.
it's a great feeling.
I hope you feel lovely having being the one who's asking them.
I'm sitting there writing my questions. They're like, oh,
You know what?
feeling good.
I'm lovely. Just like, ah, yes. Musical inspiration. I I won't talk about specific artists per se,
Hmm,
because that's just like an endless thing. Um,
hmm,
One thing that I really love as a composer is that the goal whenever you create something new is to try and top your last creation.
yes.
So it's like you're it's like you're in this endless cycle of improving and developing things. But what really inspires me is the exploration of music. I love playing instruments texturally. Like I don't mean like when I play piano it sounds like sand, and when I play the drums it sounds like uh leather.
Charcoal.
Or yeah, it feels like sawdust and chicken wings.
Wow.
I mean, I guess you could play a chord and then be like, it's like you're at the beach, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't you feel the yeah?
Mhm.
But there's something that's really fun about making random shapes on an instrument until you find something that's really cool sounding, and then search again, find something else, and next thing you know, you have three totally unique chords that you may have never played before in your life, right? And you only found that because it's like coming at it from a childish or a childlike mindset, where it's just like, let's just like make sound with
Yeah,
it
and the
and
key
see
still
what
sounds
happens.
good. Yeah.
That's what really inspires me to make music is when that's happening and then you hear something that's like bingo.
Yeah.
this this is the sound, and then once you get that core sound in there, or the core melody or groove or whatever it is, then you get this spark, like a spark of a song, and then everything else kind of flows and shapes around that. It's like you have a clay, and then you just start like
Yeah.
we're basically just working with clay all the time.
Yeah. You shape whatever you want with it.
I love orchestral music so much. I think that it is the most beautiful form of music creation that humanity has ever come up with.
Yes.
Because when you think of it, it's this massive team of people using all different instruments or different kinds, and that they all are combining their unique skills together to create one grand unit.
Yeah, I could most definitely say that. I think, like, now that you mention it, yeah, like orchestral music is just amazing. And you, a couple weeks ago, no, like a month or two ago, you sent like your Spotify playlist is just a bunch of like beautiful like orchestral like video game music, like movie soundtrack. Just
Yeah.
once in a while, like whenever I'm stressed out or I'm just like feeling like down, I put on that playlist because just sitting, just kind of like lying down in your bed, just like eyes closed, listening to that. It's just an experience for me.
It's extraordinary. Um, Another thing that has me really inspired as of late. Uh, Thinking about the orchestra, not only is it, at least in a traditional sense, this huge group of people trying to, lock in together and create this like grand finished product.
Mhm.
Um, they don't play to metronomes. I mean, if you're doing a film score or something, then sure, they've all got like a click in their ear. But generally speaking, when you see a live orchestral show, it's being conducted. And
Yeah.
so you get more of a breathing feel to the flow of time. And I've been really interested in taking that into my production. So I've been working a lot lately on no tempo,
Mhm.
like just putting down a bed track and feeling the flow that I want.
Yeah.
And then everything goes around that. And then you just never use a tempo at all.
Mhm.
And the music, it comes to life a lot faster, actually, because it suddenly feels more, well, it feels way more human.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's the core of my inspiration of exploration and the idea of flowing music.
Mhm.
I'd say things that flow really well. Nice
Yeah.
vibes. Yeah.
uh, I guess I guess some of my inspirations now. I guess like forever, like I mentioned last episode, just my one of the biggest inspirations is Daft Punk. It's just like I have them tatted on me. Just for me personally, that's when I think it's around I think 10th grade was when Random Access Memories came out, and at the time I was just listening to like pop punk, metalcore, all that, and suddenly this album comes out and just completely turned my world, at least for me, with music because there's all these layers of with everything. Like yeah, you have like the synths, the guitar, but then if you like just listen in more, you'll hear like a little like choir in the background. You'll hear this bass line in the background. It's like that for me was just like this. I don't know, it'd be like a eureka moment or just this realization, like like not only Daft Punk, but a lot of even like musicians in general, like bands, just have have these layers that if you actually sit and like listen closely, you'll hear them. And also, I gotta
Mm-hmm.
thank you
The
for showing me,
finesse.
and I gotta thank you for showing me Jacob Collier.
Oh
Like
yeah.
he, I'm so glad. I hope he wins that Grammy. If you know, if nobody knows, for this year's Grammys, Jacob Collier actually got nominated for Album of the Year. He's like one of the nominations for Album of the Year.
My
So,
boy.
and also for I think Single of the Year or something. But at least I haven't really listened to all the albums that got nominated. But right now I'm thinking Jacob Collier, because
Yeah.
just again just like the layers of. Oh, and he puts on videos of some of the songs that he wrote, and just like showing like his entire breakdown. Okay, so this is how I put this, and it's like this 2 hour thing. I sat there watched the entire thing because it's really interesting how he does it.
My take on Jacob Collier is that he is a case in point, uh, proof of childlike approaches being the key to incredible creative
Mhm.
endeavors. Like, and it shows not only in his style of composition, but it also shows in how he adds textures and layers, how he harmonizes, even how he speaks. It's like the way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Mhm.
And I just think that a lot of people, especially in the musicians community, I think they kind of look at Jacob Collier as like a freak of nature kind of
Yeah.
thing, which I get it. Um, but at the same time, I think that he should also be looked at as like a really inspiring example of what everyone is capable of.
Yes. Exactly.
And like when you can free yourself from the burden of, oh, I guess expectation might be the right word.
Mhm.
Burden of creative expectation. We'll put it that way,
Yeah.
depending on how you define it to yourself. But typically, people they're not able to play fast, or they're not able to write the songs that they want to hear because there's a block, and that block is totally solved when you're open to explore things truly. And so I think it's really amazing that he's in the spotlight for that, because not only is his music uh, pretty far beyond what I mean, just production wise, harmonically,
Mhm.
um, rhythmically. There's so many elements from all kinds of music that he's pulling together, and the fact that the world is starting to see that
Yeah.
is really cool. I think that pop music within the next 10 years is going to start becoming more and more diverse.
Yeah. Even like one of his popper songs, "Sleeping on My Dreams," off his new album, it's a pop song, but he adds these cool things along with it that you would usually not hear in a pop song.
Yeah,
It's
there's
really
jazz licks, like
yeah.
it's all over the place.
Just like there's a ding 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 like suddenly at the beginning, and then like and also like towards the end of it, it's just like this nice like humming, singing something out of nowhere again, da 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 like that. Like you would like at least like I know there's probably pop music now that's doing the same thing, but like what with that one just completely just again, it threw me off. It just something I haven't really heard before.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and I'm so stoked to just hear his pipeline
Mm-hmm.
of ideas. Like I'm really grateful that he has the resources that he has as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope to someday be able to collaborate with him. I think that
Yes.
that would be really amazing.
You hear that, Jacob? he he's Ian's ready. Ian's ready to
Yeah.
make some jams with you, or even just have a
Yeah, we're gonna make
conversation.
strawberry jam. Is what we're gonna
Exactly. I guess going along that, is there any musician or band, alive or dead, would you want to like collaborate with, or just have a simple conversation with?
That's a great question. Yeah. Man, that's a really great one. I would love to have a conversation with the band members from Little Dragon,
Mm-hmm.
um, with Jacob Collier, of course. I would really love to collaborate with the composer Masashi Hamauzu.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he did the Final Fantasy 13 soundtrack
Yes.
and has done like, which is arguably my favorite soundtrack ever made.
Mm-hmm. It's really good.
Yeah, life changing from the like just from the way that it was presented to me all the way
Yeah.
to the end. It's like really grateful for that human. um, I never really thought about it that much. I just think that it would be really great to work with any band that where the core, or any band or musician where the core of their creative process is in capturing childlike exploration.
Yeah.
I think those are the people that I want to work with, and I can't really narrow it down because it's you'd have to find them.
At least for me, again, Daft Punk, like having a conversation, or even just like it'd be cool to just be in a Daft Punk song. I don't know what it would be if I have to scream for a second or just hit a frying pan or anything. Like
Yeah,
I honestly like if they just told me, just gave me like a fork. I walk, it's like, hey, I'm here to work with a song. They just gave me a fork, like do something. I'd be like, all right, and I'll be okay. I'll be okay with it.
yeah. They just want to fart like a.
Like, all right, Zach, we need you to fart into this
We're gonna turn that into a synth. That's kind of that. I always thought, I don't really do any like ghost writing stuff. Like I don't like that per
Mhm.
se. At least present me doesn't like that. Really depends on the project and who
Yeah.
it's for, right? And the agreement. But I was just thinking, if I was in a position where I was writing pop songs, like top 40 stuff, just like pumping out instrumentals to give to singers and that,
Yeah.
I would 100% sample my cat puking or
Yeah.
something and turn that into a synth
Put some
that
reverb
like
on it. Put it.
harmonizes with the voice. Like, can you imagine? Like, how did you get that synth that's harmonizing with Ariana Grande? It's like, oh yeah, that's my dog having diarrhea.
You
It's
didn't
like,
know? If you listen
what?
closely, you hear whining from the dog.
Man, that would just be so funny. And they'd be like, no, it's not. And then you break down the session. You're like, so here's the stem. And it's just like,
Yeah.
because you can morph sound to do anything, right? I don't know. That would just be my way of like turning it into a playground. It's like, well, we're gonna try to turn the kettle boiling into a beautiful bass sub.
Mhm.
That's the task.
You reminded me, I guess like a little bit off off track, just this with sampling, how where it's become now, it's insane. Like for example, Death
Oh
Grips,
yeah.
JPEG Mafia, just like how they figure out some of their sounds. Like I know Jaden Smith recently in his not his album now, but his album before Iris, he sampled his haircut. Somehow he sampled that and made it into this really cool song with it.
Yeah.
But with Death Grips and JPEG Mafia, he did an interview where where there's times where he's just like, oh, I want to get this sound going. He like, for example, he wanted to get like a James Brown going, yeah, but he couldn't get like the cleared voice. So obviously, oh, I'll do it myself. So he just did his own thing. He also always like sometimes teases like, oh yeah, if you listen to this song, there's a you hear a dog barking somewhere here. It's just I personally love it when artists have those little like Easter eggs in songs.
Yeah,
Then
it adds character and it
Mhm.
feels more, again, it feels more human. Um, and it's sometimes it's the key for a song to get the vibe that you need.
Mhm.
I really love the idea of recording different sounds. Like I experiment a lot with using ambience and different things.
Mhm.
Um, like I'll record me going for a walk
Yeah.
at night with my phone, and then I'll use the phone recording in something. There's also like a charm with having like a low quality recording of things too. That
Yes.
um, although those phone microphones, I mean, they're pretty good
Yeah.
now. It's surprising.
Uh,
Yeah, I know
uh, uh,
Imogen Heap has an album, or she does that sampling thing a lot too.
yeah.
There's a song called Lifeline that's
Mhm.
really beautiful, where the main percussive drive is her nephew's heartbeat.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy. What is it called? I want to write this down.
it's called Lifeline
Lifeline.
by Imogen Heap.
All right, I got something to listen to later.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And
Mhm.
another thing, like you mentioned about ghostwriting, and it really depends on the person you work with. A really good example, I guess, another inspiration for me is this rap producer. He's really big right now, Kenny Beats, where
Oh yeah.
he
Yeah.
he mentions in an interview where he says, I don't produce for just anybody. He needs to like actually like sit down, not even to write music, just hang out with them, just to see like the vibe that they get off, and then from there,
Yep.
that's when he starts actually like, all right, let's work on that song or whatever. It's interesting.
It's key. What he's
Yeah.
doing is he's maintaining his creative freedom,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm sure he's been offered some crazy deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we'll give you $2 million to produce the next record for this artist or something crazy. Like
Yeah.
depends, obviously, just an
Yeah.
example. But um, if you're taking it because of the money, then you could potentially be signing yourself up for a year of hell.
Yeah.
And it's like at that point you really need to weigh, like, am I going to be able to use this money to unhell myself?
Yeah.
Or am I
Definitely.
going to want to put my fist through my computer screen because of all these demands?
Yeah.
Or worst case scenario, you have a musical director or who's not a musician, and they're calling a timpani a triangle, or like a bassoon, they call it like a,
A
I don't know,
trumpet.
a cheese wheel.
Cheese. Play that cheese wheel over there, Sonny.
Yeah, or they're calling a drum kit a ham sandwich, and it's like, I don't know what the hell.
It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and that would happen a lot with if you're writing music for advertising. It's like you really have to set your boundaries for what are you willing to do for the money that's not going to compromise what you love about making music,
Mhm.
right? And I think if you lean too much into the money side of it, then you end up destroying your authenticity completely, because you basically just become a translation slave.
Yeah.
And the decisions that you get to make are very little you, and they're just, I don't know, not my forte.
Mhm.
That's for sure. I want to be hired because of how I sound and that they
Yeah.
appreciate what I do, not
Yeah.
because I have the equipment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or just like the name. Right?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like, hey, guess what? I collaborated with this person. Oh, that's cool. It's like they're there.
Wow.
Like a lot of people more gonna listen to this. It just they're in there for you, for your music, for everything.
Yeah.
Not just like a check at the end.
Hmm. Yeah. And so long as you can maintain that,
Yeah,
then the career thing will be amazing. And
yeah.
I think that it is possible to not have to size down your dreams. Or it's absolutely possible to not have to size down your dreams for the sake of money. I
Mm.
think it's way better to work a second job that's not music than to dump all of the expectations for finances on music because it'll end up being your kryptonite as
Mm.
much as being your like your hobby or your passion, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Ickles. So, go along with like a bunch of artists, like bands, dropped a lot of really good albums this year. Is there any albums that stuck out to you this year that might be one of your favorites this year?
Well, I'm kind of behind on um like sometimes I'll discover an album during a year that it wasn't released and that'll
Mm-hmm.
be like the one
Yes.
that I listen to. So the one that meets that uh I think came out last year. It's called UFOF by Big Thief.
Okay.
I came across it in March and it totally changed my perception of songwriting and like band vibes too. Just a beautiful record across the board. And my criteria for liking an album is that I have to really love 75% of the
Mm-hmm.
tracks on it, at least,
Yep.
right? Not just like one song and then like the whole record is amazing.
Yep.
But that one is almost like every song is just like constant, like
Yeah.
whoa. Um, actually, there's a couple great records that came out this year that I really enjoy. I really like Alice in Wonderland by Nare Soul,
Okay.
or not Nair. I'm sorry if I'm saying her name wrong. She, I hope to
Yeah.
meet her someday. She's
Yeah.
a brilliant piano player and composer who I believe is from Toronto,
Oh, really? Okay.
and she has a YouTube channel. It's like um Nare Soul. It's like Nahresol. She released an album of just solo piano compositions, and there's a track on that called Anonymous Footsteps that just it was the first time that somebody else or that a solo piano piece had made me cry uh, uncontrollably in a long time. So I was just like, whoa,
Whoa, what is happening?
amazing. Thanks.
How do you spell that again? I was like trying to find it. E-
Nahresol.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
you'll be she'll blow your mind. She's
I am subscribed to listen to that tonight, actually.
wonderful. Yeah. And then the other album that I think has been really sweet that a lot could agree on is the Joji's album Nectar.
Yes. My gosh, just the
I'm
progression. I think a lot of like at least Joji fans can agree, or even just anyone in general, just like the progression where he came from. Obviously from Filthy Frank, but just the
mhm,
progression from his last album, Ballads, was it? Yeah, it was
pink
Ballad.
guy.
The big guy, yeah, Pink Guy. From that one EP he released to Ballads to now, it's just you see this growth in this musician. It's amazing. It just it's like one of those examples, just like the progression. You see like how much he progressed throughout his
Mhm.
I guess music career.
Well, the one thing to keep in mind too with this is that these kinds of albums that are like in the charts per se, um, especially electronic music, there's multiple people that write the songs and all collaborate. Like I'm sure if you check the credits of the album, there's probably like 20 or 25
Mm-hmm.
people that all have a say in it.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's that ghostwriter thing again. But when I think of a project like this though, like there's nothing wrong with teamwork
Mm-hmm.
because that's how you get really extraordinary things.
Yeah.
But what I really love about it is that it takes pop elements, but it pushes it a little bit. Like there's
Yes.
still like there's string sections in there. I know Ariana Grande's new album,
Yes.
Positions, has like a whole bunch of really creative string elements in there too.
Mm.
And I love hearing that stuff along with creative chord progressions too, and textures and tones. Like it's really cool songwriting to hear like being played on the radio and
Yeah.
things like that. So that keeps me like really stoked.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm trying to think what else I've been listening to this year. Yeah, those would be the oh.
Oh, my favorite artist.
There's an
Polka.
EP. There's an EP called Flutter
Okay.
by a producer named Bo Diaco,
Okay.
like Beaudiako, and I love his production style, and I've been totally floored by this EP. This was like in the past couple months. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Another person I just like put up for later.
yeah, you've got a stockpile.
Yeah. I mentioned in last episode just a couple of my favorite albums this year. Logic, Logic. I think he's one of the biggest surprises. I think for me personally, for artists to drop something this year, because this is like quote unquote. Apparently, this is his last album that he's releasing as Logic, and again, the past 2 or 3 albums he released, I wasn't really a fan of. There's some songs I
Yeah.
really like, but I kind of like fell off listening to him. And it's funny. Uh, Spotify sometimes notifies you like you've been listening to this whatever artist for this amount of years. Find out who it is, and I hit it, and it's like Logic, like 2014, I think, 2014, 2013 when I started listening to Logic. Like, I think about it. Yeah, I've listened to him for a while, but yeah, I completely like fell off of him. So when I heard that he dropped a new album, like his new album, I'm like, whatever. When I found out like, oh, it's his last album, and it's only everyone on social media is freaking out about it, how it's really cool. I'm like, all right, I'll give it a listen. First track, I was like, all right, I'm into it. I really
Yeah,
like it.
I'm sold.
And then song after song, again, it's just all right, all right, all right, all right. I I love it. It's
He's
definitely in
brilliant.
his lyricism, or what did that be called, lyricism, or like his
Yeah,
yeah, it's amazing. Like the references obviously he does, just the flow he has during his
yeah.
songs.
The flow,
Yeah,
the references, the attitude, like
yeah,
it's all there in him just being a brilliant.
yeah,
He's just a great artist
for
too.
sure. And another one that's I think that might be my album of the year is I don't know if you know this metal band Code Orange. They're like this
Y-
metalcore band.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah,
I've never listened, but I
they
know.
dropped an album this year, Underneath, and again, it's one of those things where I wasn't really expecting it. Which, also, my hopes of what the new album would be, I fully got it. And I was so happy because they started in their last album, Forever. They started infusing more electronic. I really liked. Some people weren't really a fan of it, but personally for me, it was a completely different uh, take for me, like what you can do with metal. Yeah, also
Mhm.
you have like your breakdowns, your like open string like djent like like sounds, but with Code Orange they completely like again there's probably other metal bands on, but like for me just how they could break this barrier with metal music and just experiment with the sound. So when they announced this new album, I'm like, oh, I hopefully they add more electronic into it, and
Mm.
yeah, they added way more into this new album. And again, I was just really happy to hear them do that. And they they're one of the I guess like an off note, they're one of the first bands to start doing like the live stream sets, like live stream like concerts.
Right on. So they're obviously they're spearheading some pretty cool creative decisions on their part. You reminded me with the going like leaning into the electronic sort of hybrid thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's really great when bands they start to evolve and add pieces. And in many ways, like fans of bands, if they are upset with that kind of thing, then they're not really fans.
You're a
I mean,
fake fan. Yeah,
I mean, maybe they're not fans anymore, right? Like
yeah,
you can like the old stuff and not the new. That's fine. Doesn't mean you
mm-hmm.
hate the band, right?
Yeah,
But I think that when Like if I think about what I think it means for someone to be a fan of something, it means that they appreciate that artist and they trust in their art, right?
Yeah.
So when a band changes their vibe, or they change things up, I love that. Even if I don't really like the music anymore, it's still like this band is like, they're doing stuff.
Yeah.
They're exploring, and I respect exploration above above all, right?
Yeah.
Um, that also reminded me of there is no album that he's released yet, but definitely my favorite artist of this year is still Woozy.
Was he? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, every single production that he's put out is it's brilliant songwriting. Um, he's got a great voice, great lyrics. It's just like right up my alley for that, and he's someone who I would love to collaborate with
Hmm.
too. That would be remarkable.
I guess going on a little bit on it is just like when bands change their sound and like you see like you kind of the shift of like I guess the fans like kind of like turning away from like oh they went this certain direction like some examples this like emo pop punk band Turnover they like started off as like that kind of band but then they slowly became like the shoegazy like indie kind of music and then suddenly you see like I personally like their older stuff but I still really like their new stuff. It's
Hmm.
just you could still be a fan of like both things, and like nobody's really stopping you from like
Of
not
course,
being able to
yeah,
like their old stuff.
yeah. I don't mean to make it seem like it's like screw you if you don't
Yeah,
like
yeah,
my
yeah,
stuff anymore.
yeah.
But I think that the important thing is that uh, you don't feel entitled to what an artist or a band creates, right?
Hmm.
It's like they let them do their thing. Like don't be mad.
Yeah.
You can be like, "Oh man, I hate country. Why did they go and start making country
Yeah.
music?" It's like, or you could go into it and be like, "Well, I loved the stuff they did before. I don't like country, but I like them.
I did.
So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
this is my gateway into country." It's like
Hmm.
it's just a more optimistic sort of view on
Yeah.
the growth. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great point though.
And one of the biggest discoveries I think this year was listening to country. Was I think Orville Peck. Orville Peck I think is one of those guys where I would never listen to country ever before if like one of my friends recommended Orville Peck and just listening to his music because I'm so he's I think that's I not for everyone but I think some of the like, people like are so used to like the bro country kind of
Yeah.
like chugging beers with the homies or whatever. But there's actually like really cool things they do with country. With Over at Pokey, kind of has that like that the like the cowboy western. I don't know how to describe like that kind of voice. But he's like
Mhm.
telling like a tale of like this lone stranger. Just that stuff is really cool to me. And just like the more and more,
Yeah.
and then after Orville Peck, I'm like, who else is cool? Like who's other like, some good ones? And I get recommended like Chris Stapleton. He's another good country artist. Definitely, I don't know if he. I think he most definitely is gonna be in like later on. Probably this month I'll make like my top 10, top 12 favorite albums. But that his album he released this year was another one that I found myself coming back to. It was really good.
Yeah, I think the cool thing about genre is, especially in today's age, this goes way back to what we were talking about earlier with learning songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have access to every style of music, the history of every style of music, videos of people playing every style of music, and the freedom to decide what you like and what you don't like in relation to whatever you hear people create. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have access to the internet, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you take that and you get uh, now this like defining genre is very difficult because people take little bits and pieces from everything.
Yes.
But to sort of like close your mind off to a full genre because you heard some things from it that are like, there exists an artist who blends one of your favorite genres with
Yes.
that one, who could get your foot in the door with it. And it's
Yeah.
like, then you get more comfortable. It's like you start to acclimate to the room temperature, and it's not so bad in here. And then next thing you know, that's how it worked with jazz for me.
Yeah.
I thought the jazz was all just like
Mm-hmm. Insane 5 minute drum solo
yeah, or
or
just
piano
like
solo.
like a elevator
Yeah.
or like jazz ballad like or
I love this already.
um yeah, I'm gonna give you an example of all the genres now.
I was gonna say the pentatonics live right now.
Yeah. um but as I got more into it, I was like, oh, that's a cool chord. And it's hey, that sounds like the Final Fantasy song that I heard. It's like, wait a minute. It's like, and then all of a sudden I love jazz and I love Bill
Yeah.
Evans and so
I guess quickly you could bring up what is one of your like all time favorite albums.
oh, that's a lovely one. Because I'm a bum and a musician who listens to a lot of music, I'll give you three.
All right.
uh the album Gist Is by Adult Jazz.
Okay.
It's like Gist and then is. It's just lovely across the board. I don't know. It's like one of those things that it's an experience that is so perfectly captured in its moment of conception. Um, I also love the Final Fantasy 13 soundtrack.
Yeah.
Has a special place in my heart. And you know what? I say an album uh, Smash Hits by Ben Van Gelder and Reiner Boss
Okay.
and the Metropole Orchestra. I think that's how you pronounce all that
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Nuts.
Blew my mind.
Nice. And I quickly like uh bullet time go through like my favorites. Obviously, Daft Punk Random Access Memories, amazing. Tyler the Creator's Flower Boy,
Oh
that's
yeah.
another one that listening to him since high school and listening to him now is makes me really happy to see where he is right now with music.
Yeah, he's
And
brilliant as
yeah,
well.
and third one, oh my gosh, the third one. I guess a big shout out to a local band, Romancer. They're really good emo band. They just what they're doing. Their album, as we both close in the on the water, is one of those albums where, at least for me, like I listen to a lot of like pop punk emo, but for them, they like stand out for me. What they're doing, it's amazing. I highly recommend them.
Right on.
Yeah,
It's always nice for some local love, right?
yeah, and yeah, that's like my three out of like my million. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah. It's like it's hard to pin stuff, but
one last question, Ian. What is the what are you working on right now? What's the future right now? I know on your Instagram, which I'll link in the description, you have a little like teaser, like a little like date of what's happening. Can you give us a little like taste of what it's gonna be? Or
all right. Well, because I'm not signed to a record label and I really don't care.
okay,
So I'm releasing the project that I worked on over the summer.
mm-hmm.
I guess in the quarantine thing. I won't say what it's called because it's an epic title, but
Mm-hmm.
basically it's 12 songs that are all they all are fully written and composed songs with lyrics,
Yep.
and probably the most ambitious thing that I've ever taken on, like
Oh, okay.
because I had to write the damn songs first. Like, what chord comes next? Should I sing about potatoes? And I also had to practice singing, practice playing guitar, practice playing drums, practice playing cello, practice playing the piano parts, practice recording all that shit, and then practice mixing it. So it was like I was working on like 10 billion things at once.
Mhm.
And it was just this like I feel like I almost blacked out for it. It was just such an intensely focused like 5 month project.
Mhm.
And I had the idea to make a project of all recorded instruments with like written songs and lyrics and that for about 2 years.
Mhm.
But I never had the because I didn't have the time to practice the instruments how I wanted or really suss out the songs. It kind of got put on holds, but so it's just going to be a really I I I think it's going to be a surprising project that a lot of people won't expect from me. You know, I can't put words in people's mouths because that's lame. But I just think that it'll be a really special experience, and it will be out in January.
January. All right.
Yeah.
Put
And then
that.
I'm also
mark it on
working
your
on.
calendars,
Yeah.
everyone.
Okay. I got more. uh, I'm working on another project as well. I'm going to be drifting away from the format that I have on my Instagram because it's just actually kind of annoying to do it like that.
Mhm.
But you know, all that, we'll see what happens. I have tons of music still. I have about 40 songs that are being worked on right
Mhm.
now, and who knows when they will reach everyone's ears, but they will someday.
Yeah. Amazing. I forgot to mention earlier, like at the beginning of the interview, if you like that really cool intro song from the last episode and this episode, it comes from this guy. This guy right here. Exactly. So I just want to say thank you, Ian, for doing this episode with me. And
My pleasure. Let's rock.
and yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And we're gonna end the episode off with a little bit of Ian's music. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a bunch, man. This was spectacular. I'm really happy that you're doing this because you're going to meet a lot of really wonderful people. And
I sure
yeah.
hope so.
Yeah, oh, this guy's not wonderful.
All right.
Yeah, much love, and keep it real, everyone.